All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our second show today here on The Lead. It's the Voice of Hope Global with Jacqueline Gerasimides. Today she talks with MHDD, and here we go with Jacqueline Gerasimides. Jacqueline, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
All
Good morning.
Who are listening to the show today. We welcome you, and we are excited that you are here with us today. I know this is going to be a life-changing broadcast to those who are listening. And please, please do share it with other people that you know that will need the content of this show, because it is very, very important. It can save a life, so it is very important that you remember that. Like and share it, please, with others. So, to begin with, we are going to go around here with all our wonderful guests on the show. Thank you so very much that you gave up your time to come. I know this is a very important topic for all of you, and that's why you're here. So we welcome you. If we can, I know you all, but the viewers do not know you. So let's go around and please introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Kate. I work for Hill Country MHDD Centers. I'm the recruiter. And so if any of this strikes you as something that you'd want to be a part of or that you need more information on, you can always check out our website at www.hillcountry.org. Or if you'd like to come and help us out with this, we're also hiring all the time. So just check out that website again.
Good morning and happy Friday, everyone. My name is Amy Anderson. I am a training specialist for Hill Country MHDD. I am the director over the Mental Health First Aid Program, which is, we're going to talk a lot about how that program can help those who may be struggling with thoughts of suicide. And again, super excited to be here, and thanks for inviting us.
Yes, thank you. And
hi, thanks for having me here. Definitely glad to be here.
It's wonderful to have a male on the show. You are outnumbered by females, Jason.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. That's okay, right? Yeah. So my name is Jason Johnson. I formerly was the program director for our peer support program with Hill Country MHDD, and glad to be with my family here.
Yes.
Also a facilitator of trainings, assist suicide intervention and RAP, wellness recovery action planning.
Wonderful.
Also, so I am a survivor of my own suicide attempt, and so hopefully we'll have
time to go into that. And thank you so much. And I know that's not an easy thing to talk about for anybody. But you know, when we get the courage to step out in faith, we never know that our testimony, the things that we go through in life, changes a life. So I know it's going to change the lives of those that hear it, and we'll get back to you shortly. Teresa.
Hi, everybody. My name is Teresa Gonzalez. I, too, work with Kate and Amy at Hill Country Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities. I am a training specialist as well, focusing on mental health first aid.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. And you know, I have a couple of little quotes here that I want to read, because I think that it's so good, because it really takes the understanding of what a person feels like when they're thinking about suicide. And it's a huge topic, and we don't talk about it enough, and we don't understand its workings enough. And it doesn't only attach itself to a different people group or a particular race or a faith-based or religious belief system. It's people struggle, and that's what we need to understand and how we can help them. So here's a quote. It said, "Nobody will understand until you tell people your story. And if that story saves one more life, then choosing to stay will not have been in vain. It's just a lie. Don't listen."
So, hello, Jason. Absolutely, because you're safe. I have had the pleasure of traveling with Jason many times, and to youth organizations, to junior colleges, and to share his story. And I will tell you, he is saving lives by sharing his story.
Yes.
As heart-wrenching as I know it is to go back and think about that sometimes. But again, I thank him all the time for taking the time to share his story, because you are saving lives.
And the thing is that that's not who you are. That's what you experienced for a moment in time. You know, suicide, when people decide to take their life, it's a temporary thing. but they're trying, you know, the actual act is a long-term thing, but it's just a temporary thing that one goes through. Can you agree with that, Jason?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, once I got past actually woke up in the hospital and after my attempt and was able to start talking about those things. I mean, it did take some time, but yeah, I mean, now I look back and I always tell people I try not to live a life of regrets.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm so thankful, one, that I was not successful in that attempt, and two, I wonder what my life would have been like if I would have spoke up earlier when I had those opportunities, when people did reach out and say, you know, what's going on. And I was too afraid. I wanted to help, but I didn't know how to receive it.
And that's something that people go through. They are afraid to talk about because they think that if I say something, people are going to look at me funny, I'm going to lose friendships, people don't want to have anything to do with me, they're going to reject me, they're going to abandon me. And that's, again, it's such a lie. And, you know, in the culture that we live in, everything has to be so picture perfect. Everything has to be good. It's such as, and it's just not that way. We're not perfect people.
Right.
Life is hard. It's beautiful, but it's hard. We go through hard situations in our life. And when we go through them, it's okay to say, you know, I'm battling. And maybe it's not suicide. Maybe it's just I'm battling with a problem at home, a bad marriage, parenting children that are, you know, wayward, or et cetera, or I'm having a financial crisis, whatever it is. But, you know, we go through difficult situations. And amongst that, there's always hope. God is there. There's always hope for every situation that we go through. Don't you think so, Kate?
I agree. And it's reaching out. And Amy and Teresa teach this great mental health first aid that teaches you how to approach someone who may need help. And like Jason said, you need to just accept it. And it's okay to talk to people. It's okay to not be okay.
Right. But that is so like counterculture, though. When you think about our society that really, I would say, rages on this idea of positive self-esteem and self-confidence. And we think about our culture. We take so many medications to get rid of emotions that we feel are negative, right? Because our culture says you're not supposed to feel that way. So we automatically think that something is wrong. And so that adds to the shame and the difficulty that you're already feeling and carrying around with you about even having these thoughts, and also dealing with what led you to that place. And that, you know, is really a place where more conversation needs to take place. Also,
absolutely.
You know, is what caused you to think this way? You know, what happened? Not what's wrong. Not what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
What happened to you?
And because it happened, I'm just gonna, if you're a doctor, I'm just gonna write a script. Just take that. But they never get down to the nitty-gritty of, okay, why are you feeling like that? You know, getting to really understand a person, finding out their roots, where they're coming from, why they're feeling what they're feeling, and why they're feeling like that, and integrate your knowledge and your expertise into that so that you can really help a person.
Absolutely.
We become like puppets, like our lives don't matter. But in the eyes of God, our lives do matter.
Absolutely.
You know, he says that the plans that I have for you are good, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future. Yes. You know, if people could really grasp a hold of the fact that they have a life to live, and it's beautiful, and it's gorgeous, and it doesn't, not everybody's going to be on a stage, but that doesn't matter. Every life counts. Every life matters. Every word is important. Everything that you say impacts somebody else. And that's important, and people need to understand that, because you're very right, Jason, we live in a shame-based culture, that everything we do is shameful, and we live in so much condemnation and guilt. We either do this right, or we don't do this right, and we're all flawed. We're not perfect.
Right, absolutely.
I also just want to say a couple of things. Yes, Jason and I, but actually Jason, all three of us, believe it or not, are instructors, including Jason. We also, I really want to talk about mental health first aid later on, but we also instruct which is the world renowned, which is assist class, which is how do you assist somebody who is having those thoughts of suicide. And I just want to tell you just a little bit about it, which I think is what we're talking about, is the fact that think about right here in wherever you are, whether it's in Kerrville, wherever you're hearing this this cast today, right? I want you to think about smack dab in the middle of your community is a river of suicide, right? And that wouldn't it be wonderful if we did, our whole community did everything we could to prevent suicide, because suicide is preventable, right?
It is.
And so we know that, think about a river of suicide. It's a great analogy, right? You know, if you think about it, and then you've got people who start having thoughts of suicide. What are those contributaries that, again, have them to start thinking about suicide? But then we have this barrier, right, that keeps them from going into the river of suicide. But when they start having more and more contributors, if we don't get them and intervene with them before they go over them, they're going to be into that river of suicide, right?
Right.
Once they get into that river of suicide, you think about a true river, right? There's going to be rapids, and there's going to be a waterfall, right? If we don't catch them before that waterfall, what's going to happen, right? So keeping this in mind, as we can make a place at plucking them out of that. It doesn't matter how, we just got to get them out of there and let them know that help is available, right? What they're going through is exactly what you said, but we've got to get in there, pluck them out of that river of suicide and let them know help is available,
Yeah,
right?
and that's a really good analogy. I really like that. I like that. It's very good because I see it. I'm a visual person, so I can actually see that.
Yes.
And the way, and you can have like different people along the way. Okay, if you've taken one first step, let's get somebody right there to help you. But how can we get the word out more and more? Tell me a little bit about what you're doing. You and Teresa, I know you're very quiet over there.
So Teresa, tell them a
I'm a
little bit.
listener.
Let's hear Teresa.
Naturally, I am a listener.
Yes.
So one of the things that we do, so Amy and I do a lot of different trainings, and ASSIST, which stands for Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. It is a very in-depth program. It is 2 days long, and it is all about suicide. As Amy said, it is the premier, world-renowned, evidence-based, 30-plus year program that's taught all over the world on how to intervene when someone is in that state of suicide. But I think one of the things that, and Jason, when you spoke about shame, that is something that is taught to us. We're not born feeling shame. It is something that is taught to us from a very, very young age. So as a person, I love working with children. I've worked with them many, many years in my career. And one of the things that I think that where mental health first aid, and so I'm going to toss in mental health first aid here, is that we talk about having these conversations early on and making it a daily thing, and not so much working towards only focusing on when someone is suicidal, but can we get to them before they get there?
Right.
Can we reach out to them? Can we teach little people? And when I say little people, I'm talking about our primary school age children. Give them some words. Like, what is it when I feel a certain way? What is the word attached to that? Does that mean I'm angry, I'm disappointed, I'm frustrated? And teach them coping from that point. We teach in mental health first aid, adults assisting youth, how to recognize when those littles are struggling and how to get them appropriate help. It doesn't always, now we're not saying here that it always means that they have to see a professional.
What are some of those signs that you would see?
So some of those signs, maybe withdrawal. That's often a big one. Something that always clues me in when I see somebody struggling, as I ask them, hey, what do you like doing? And then my follow-up question is, when's the last time you did it?
Yeah, that's good.
And that's a really big clue as to where they are. Because if they stop doing, hint hint is a sign that somebody is struggling, then it's a clue to you. Hold on, so what's keeping you from doing those things that bring joy to your life, that bring meaning and purpose? Because I would say, and Jason, feel free to chime in here, that when people are struggling with thoughts of suicide, it feels hopeless.
Yeah, it does.
It feels like there's no safe way out. And unfortunately, sometimes, and we teach in mental health first aid and in ASSIST, to look for those warning signs, but I'm going to ask you to think about it in these terms. What about if we look at these warning signs instead as invitations
Yeah,
to
that's really
important
good.
conversation? To say, you know, Jason, would you mind kind of role playing here with me? If I said to Jason, you know, I've noticed we get together for coffee every day, and this last week I've been texting you, you're not texting me back. Are you okay? What would that mean to you?
I mean, that would definitely be, it would be nice. It would be, right? If people actually ask those questions.
Yeah, right?
You know, what's going on? You know, I
Yeah.
haven't seen you. You know, I would probably say, though, I'm just not feeling well, you know, and blame it on a physical, you know.
Ailment or something.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Because
Yeah.
it's,
So many times people say, "Oh, I'm fine."
yeah,
Because you don't want to say it. So just, I'm fine.
right.
We want to blow them off. You know, we wear masks, right, to protect ourselves from illness, protect others from illness. But I think sometimes it can also be a barrier from letting us share really with how we feel, because
Right, and
you know,
people are scared to really share how they feel. They don't want to talk about their emotions, especially different cultures. Now that I will say, you know, especially people know about the British people have the stiff upper lip. You know, we're trained to not show our affections, not show our emotions, not share anything that goes on. You know, and some people say, "Oh gosh, that person's like stiff as a board," but you know, there's something like you said. You're not born that way. People, it's just a mentality and a culture, and it's absolutely horrible. It's wrong, absolutely wrong. So
Absolutely.
and we have to go around breaking those molds. We have to talk about how we feel and what we think, and we can't ever worry about, is that person going to walk away from me? Is that person going to reject me? Is that person going to abandon me? Because, you know, at the end of the day, if they do, so what? And if you're listening to this broadcast, if that's happened to you, it's okay. It's not you. It's not you. You shared your feelings. You shared your emotions. You shared what you're struggling with. It's perhaps the other person that can't deal with it, can't handle it. Or maybe they're going through similar things and they just can't deal with the overload. So don't ever let that stop you from sharing how you really feel about yourself, your life, your situation. You never know who you're going to help. Isn't that true, Jason?
Absolutely. If somebody doesn't listen, find somebody else. You
Yeah,
know,
good.
don't
I
don't
love
stop
that.
sharing.
It's
Well,
like,
men are taught to not show any emotion. Men are taught be stoic. You can't show. It's not manly to. And so the fact that you're sharing this.
Oh yeah, I mean, I see that so much. You know, as we would travel and do
Yeah.
youth mental health first aid.
Yeah.
And I love our football coaches. I do. but there seems to be this idea that sports is the only answer, and you don't need therapy, you don't need counseling. Yes, it helps because it gets you become part of a team, right? You get physically active. You can get some of the aggression and the different things that you're feeling, but that's only if you fit into that culture, that population. When I was in junior high and high school, you know, I mean, I was chubby and nerdy and not very outgoing. I mean, I barely talked to myself at that time. So trying to talk to other people was really, really difficult, you know.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who were quiet really get overlooked in society, but also, you know, in our schools, and that's sad.
Yeah.
You know.
I would always teach my daughters, you know, if someone's quiet, go on purpose and talk to them. Because, you know, when we live our life, we should live on purpose and be proactive in things. So if you see someone that's hiding somewhere, just, you never know. Like you said, Teresa, they may be withdrawn. They may be thinking about, you know, harmful things or bad thoughts, and they don't know how to process them. Don't you find that often? They don't know how to process them.
well, and it's kind of like what we see on the outside might look really good. When we are working in schools and we're talking to teachers and administrators and parents, and we say things like, you know, it's not so much what you can see, it's often what you can't. And I also
good.
think about those students and young people that perhaps they're high functioning.
Right.
You know, they are student council, athletes, popular, and they seem to have it all. But then those are also the students that unfortunately have lost their battles with their struggles and end up dying by suicide. So it's really, there isn't one particular image of a person with thoughts of suicide.
Right.
Really, any
could
of
be
us seated here.
Yeah, yeah.
We say it's neither a poor man's disease nor a rich man's curse. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I also want to say that if you're out there today and you don't know how, maybe you have a loved one that you don't know how to have that conversation with, we just say start. We're not asking for perfection, right? Notice those signs and symptoms and ask those questions, and don't be afraid. I also want to say this, if you don't ask, who will?
Right.
If you don't ask, and the worst part of it is if you don't ask, what's the cost of inaction, right? What is
Yeah.
the cost? And so we also get ourselves in trouble when we assume. And let me
That
just
is
dive into that for
so
just a
true.
moment. A lot of
true.
times, parents, loved ones can miss whenever someone, let me just say that Jacqueline, she's my daughter, and she's so very outgoing. Let me just paint the picture of her. She's so outgoing. She's always got herself together. She tells me good morning. She's the first one. She has a smile on her face. She's always helping me around the house. She's got lots of energy. But you know what, Jason? I don't know. He's my husband here, and I'm in our make-believe world. Have you noticed that Jacqueline, she's just really locking herself up in the room? She's sad. I can't even get her to come down and have dinner with us. She doesn't kiss me in the morning anymore. I'm really concerned about her. But then 2 weeks later, she's got this energy about her. You know where I'm going with this, right? She's got this energy about her. And me, in my, we don't ask questions. And that's where we tell a story. And I'm going to give you this. You're going to want to Google him later. He is one of our spokespersons for Mental Health First Aid. And his last name is Hines, Hines, Kevin Hines. And you're like, well, I don't think I'd want to be the spokesperson for suicide. But he, too, at the age of 19,
Why not?
attempted suicide. Like, what did he do? He jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge.
Are you
And he,
serious?
Oh, yes.
Seriously?
And he learned and he lived to tell about it. But we go back, and in one of his testimonies, he said, on that day that I was so down and out, he said, and you see this dramatic mood change, which is what I'm trying to depict here with saying, this is you, my daughter, and all of a sudden you've been so outgoing, you've been down, and all of a sudden you have this energy again that most parents, most loved ones say, she's figured it out, thank goodness. Yeah, she's all better now. But in reality,
Yeah, there you
we
go.
need to ask that question, and it could sound something like this. So, Jacqueline, I am so glad to see Joy back in your life. Sweetheart, tell me what's going on. And hopefully she says, well, I've been seeing this amazing counselor. Her name, is Kate, and she's really helped me deal with some issues that I've been having in my life, right? And so you're like, whew, that's great. But what if I don't ask that question? What if I ask that question, sweetheart, I'm so glad to see that joy back in your life. What's brought the joy back into your life? And she says, you know what, Mom? Dad, I've been struggling with thoughts of suicide, and I finally have the energy to do it.
And that's wonderful, and I'd love to be your daughter. No, but you seem like you'd be a wonderful mom. But I mean, in actual fact, we should take on that role. We should be mothers when we see younger people. We should be fathers when we see younger people that are struggling, and take on that parenting type of role. And because that is, young people are looking for that. Mothers and fathers and heroes and role models that they can trust, that they can go to. Couches and hairdressers and all these wonderful people out there that are approachable and make themselves approachable and friendly. He who wants friends must himself be friendly, So if you go with a smile and it doesn't take a lot to be genuine and to be real and just say, you know what? I can see that behind that smile, like you said, Amy, there's a lost little boy there. There's a lost little girl there. I just want to walk with you a little bit.
Absolutely.
I just want to take a few steps. Bring me
Have
in.
you heard the old saying is that don't walk in front of me? I know you've probably heard this old saying, don't walk in front of me.
Yeah.
Don't walk behind me, just walk beside me
It's
and
true.
be my friend,
It's
right?
true.
And it's the same thing. But let me ask you, Jacqueline, why aren't our loved ones, why aren't those that are seeing these, why aren't they asking those questions? Why aren't they asking it?
Because they're told that they shouldn't.
Or the fear of the unknown. I'm afraid
Or
that
the
you may
unknown.
suicidal.
Exactly.
Right.
And then,
And
all
then
of a
what
sudden
do
you
you
don't know,
do?
you don't know what to do. How do you cope with that? How do you think about that? And and I've heard this, and please chime in on this, that sometimes it's become fashionable to think those thoughts.
Absolutely.
That is just so perverse, in my opinion. It's absolutely wrong.
And I think
Glamorizing
in many
something like
cases,
that.
it is one of those things that has been misinterpreted as, I
Yeah,
think,
big time.
the real unfortunate issue. But one of the things I want to say about this next generation, Generation Z, whatever we're calling them these days, is that I'm so proud of them because they are putting themselves out there in various formats that are talking about in a platform, and we as adults need to do a better job of catching up with that level of comfort and transparency that thoughts of suicide, something that we need everybody to understand is that they're common. They will happen. That does not mean that you are a bad person. That does not mean that you are a weak person. And what we want you to know, and what we teach consistently across all of our prevention programs, primarily, hint, hint, shameless plug, mental health first aid,
Well done.
yeah, is that help is available. And I stole this from Amy, so I'm going to give her credit. Is that what we want is, and she's probably said this before, is that there is help, there is hope, there is healing, and recovery is most certainly possible. And it will look different than, let's say, someone recovering from a physical condition. And so, Jason, I'm really curious. What were some of the key points that you remember about your recovery? What were some things that supported you in your journey?
Sure. Excuse me. It really started off with meeting just a couple of people who saw me and saw what I was capable of. They knew
Exactly.
They knew the dreams and the goals that I had. And unfortunately, unlike some of the counselors and doctors that I dealt with, they encouraged me to follow my dreams rather than say, no, don't do that. I can't think of how many counselors and psychiatrists said, don't go work with kids from abused homes.
Are you serious?
Because you're just going to decompensate, because that was part of my history. And
I'm so sorry.
So, and then I always say, the unasked question that almost killed me was, what can we do to help me get there? I didn't have that voice yet. What's going to help me be ready to do this kind of work? If you don't think I'm ready now to do that, what can I do? What can you do to help me be prepared to take on that calling? And again, I didn't have a voice at that time, and then unfortunately, it wasn't offered. And so it's so many times that we say, avoid stress or avoid, certain types of careers. And when you do that, so I was thinking about, if I take away all the stress in my life, what do I have left? Nothing. And so for a long time, I really felt, I was like, my doctors and counselors, they saved me from wanting to kill myself so that I could live life that wasn't even worth living, because I felt empty and I had no dreams, I had no hope, and I had no goals. That was a setup for future attempts of suicide years and years of self-destructive behavior, overdosing on medications and alcohol, to the point of, ending up in the ER. And so it was those things. I remember I was put on Social Security disability at one point many years ago, about 2002. And I moved into an apartment complex where it was 4 people on disability.
Okay.
And the apartment manager was somebody that I had talked to several times. My mom had talked to several times. And so she kind of knew what I was about and things that I wanted. And I remember the day I went to sign my lease, and she said, "You're not going to be here long." And I'm thinking, what did I do? I'm already in trouble. And she said, "No." She's like, "You're going to be one of my success stories." And it was that it sparked hope in me that somebody else sees the possibility, you know.
That
and
is such an
Still gives
important
me
key.
goosebumps.
Yeah,
I've
and
heard,
that's
I've heard
amazing.
many times. It still gives me goosebumps.
It's like girls saying, if you just ask, you could be that favorite aunt, or you could be the person that they feel okay saying it to. You might not be able to say it to your mom or to your teacher or to whoever, but I don't know, Teresa asking somebody, they may think, well, she sees me in the way that you ask. And so, if you, like you said, if you don't say anything,
When young people, of any age, when you believe in them, that causes them to believe in themselves.
It's huge. It's huge. I mean, young people and anybody, when we choose to see them the way that God sees them. And we are created beautiful. There's no flaws in us. God created a perfect person. And he looks at us and he talks to us with love, with gentleness, with kindness. Yes, he reprimands us, but I'm just saying, if we can look at others in that same way, even a wayward child, I mean, my youngest daughter is a little troubled in many ways. But she is coming out of it, and she had thoughts of suicide. And when she was able to come out of that, she said, Mom, what I want to do is start a movement almost.
Wow.
Because I want to tell my story. I want to help other people. I want to be able to get my voice out there, like you're saying, Jason, because those people are listening. And what you're saying, Teresa, is the younger people, they're looking for real. They're looking for raw. They're looking for someone that will just say, hey, here I am. Flaws, good, bad, ugly, it doesn't matter. But I care. I love. I'm going to walk with you. I'm not going to abandon you like other people have done. And that is so key and vital, that they can look into your soul, Jason, like you said, that it just took one to look into your soul, my friend, and say, there is something precious in there. There is something beautiful in there. I believe in you.
Absolutely.
And Jacqueline, I also want to say this because we've got a lot of listeners out here today that are going, I just don't think I'm equipped to have these conversations, right? So I also want to say, remember, if you see some of those signs and symptoms, all I ask you to do is be with them, and remember, it doesn't take a lot just to listen. But when you said earlier, when we teach our Algae Action Plan, one of the steps is to listen non-judgmentally. And in my opinion, that's probably the most important letter of our whole action plan, because it teaches you to listen to the story, but here's the key, uninterrupted. How many people do you think start listening to that story, they immediately want to fix you, right?
Yeah, that's
so
a really...
there's healing.
Yeah.
There's healing in hearing that story. So for just being that friend, being in that uncomfortable silent moment, just to say, tell me more, but then I need to prepare you. When they usually share that story of what they're going through, it's yucky.
Yeah.
So be prepared for that. It's yucky, but for that person that's going through that, it's got to be told, and sometimes we've got to learn to just sit in the muck with them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so when we hear that, we can hear that story. If you don't feel, and I would love to get there about how do you even ask that question of, are you having thoughts of suicide? But even if you're like, I've had many people say, I love your program. I think I like you too, Amy, but I'm telling you that will never come out of my mouth. I'm like, fair enough. I don't care if you never can get the words, are you having thoughts of suicide? Just see it, be with them, and get them connected to appropriate professional help, right?
And I think what you just said is very important. And sometimes it's not so much what you say, but it's how you say it.
Yeah.
And the spirit in which you come to somebody, with humility, with graciousness, with love. It's okay to say to somebody, I love you.
Yes,
and they think,
absolutely.
why do you love me? That is such an icebreaker there, because they'll look at themselves, and if they feel shame, if they feel dirty, if they feel that they're living under a weight of condemnation and guilt, and you say to them, you know what? I see so much in you. I love you.
There's four words. There's four.
It disarms
series.
people.
Yeah, yeah.
if she really knew me, she wouldn't love me. But
Right.
you saying it that way, it's like, maybe she does. Maybe she does.
Yeah, because the hardest people to love are the ones that need it the most. And I think that's something that, and somebody with thoughts of suicide that is struggling with their mental health, unfortunately at that point in time, and feel free to disagree with me, but I feel like your brain is telling you this is what you deserve. This is, and so to counter that, it's going to take some effort, but it's definitely possible, because I'm also willing to bet that people with thoughts of suicide, even though they think that death is the solution to their problem, there's also even a tiny little, it might be very, very minute, very tiny part of them that also wants to live.
Absolutely.
Well, I think everybody really wants to live, but everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to be understood. Everybody wants to feel that they matter, their lives matter, their voice counts. Wouldn't you say that, Jason?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, I mean, and yes, the so feelings of self-hate, shame, feeling dirty, that was an everyday, you know. I felt like, I remember, like, I would be so into my dark place that if I came out of it just a little bit and would laugh and, you know, stuff like that, I felt uncomfortable, that I just started saying, you're just being stupid, you know, and I would put myself back in there because that's where I was comfortable, because I'd been there for so long.
How did that all originate? Tell us your story a little bit for those that are listening.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it really, I would say the key,
what was the foundation upon which all these things started to come forth that made you feel that you needed to live in a dark place?
It started really, I would say that the key thing that started it, I was 5. And was sexually abused by a boy in the neighborhood that was 12 or 13. And it really changed everything for me. I was afraid all the time. I can remember my brother and I not driving, riding our bikes around the neighborhood. Yeah, well, that was at 8. driving around, you know, riding our bikes around the neighborhood. Yeah, that was part of the problem. Yeah. But I would get to a place where I didn't recognize my surroundings, and I would just become overcome with fear, where I was crying and just frantic. And so my brother would get me back to, excuse me.
It's all right.
To a place that I recognized, where I felt safe. And I know
Thank God for family.
Yes,
Thank God for those that will walk with us, like what we were talking about, you know, those that are not going to abandon us and say, you know, I'm walking this journey with you. If it wasn't for grace, there go I, you know. It could happen to me too, at any point, at any moment. And so it's good that, praise God for your brother. You know, what an impact he had even in that moment. I mean, the moments in our life count so much. It's so impactful. We never know from moment to moment what kind of situation we may find ourselves in. One minute we're happy, the next minute we're not happy, when they're moody, our feelings are all upside down. We all go through that. But that's why it's so important to live in community, to have one another, that we're all connected, and that we all share our stories, that we all know that, you know, I want to hear from you. It's not all about the person talking, but it's like, let me hear your story. I can learn from you. You can learn from me, and together we're more powerful. 2 is more powerful than 1.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so so my mom took me to a counselor after that event, and the counselor at the time said it would do me more harm to go through any type of counseling.
I cannot believe I'm hearing this.
So
that is absolutely appalling.
So it was left alone. You know, I mean,
I am so sorry. I just feel that just hits me so hard that a counselor who's supposed to be trained, come on now, would say something like that to a young man.
You have to think of the time too.
That's just
that
terrible.
This was probably happening. I don't share typically this, but I too was hurt as a child, and it took years for me to finally share my story with my mother. And here was the sad part, and I don't blame. Please take this, that I think they did the best that they could with what they knew at the time. But it was kind of like, well, once they saw the signs and symptoms, I didn't care about my appearance. I wasn't sleeping. I was withdrawing. All of the things, all those signs that might have been dismissed as typical adolescence.
Yeah.
I was told I was being lazy.
Wow.
That, I'm a young woman. I should care about my makeup and my hair and all those things, those superficial things, right? But when I shared my story, sometimes those stories get suppressed.
Yeah.
Once I said it, it was like, we're never going to talk about it again. And I think that's a really important message that listeners need to understand, that when somebody shares their story with you,
Yeah.
we want to encourage appropriate professional help
Yeah.
that's going to move them forward.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we talk about how long does it take for the average person to reach out and get mental health help. Amy, I'll let you say that.
Yeah. Please do chime in with the
10
microphone.
years, absolutely, and it's unacceptable. I mean, for most people, per our statistics,
10 years?
it takes 10 years for somebody to come forward and get help. Why? Because of stigma. Stigma
Yeah.
is the number one reason,
It's big.
that people do not come forward and get help. But I think there's a series of 4 words that I think are so helpful. Teresa's already mentioned some of them. Is everyone needs to know there is help.
Yeah.
I call it the 3 H's and an R. There's help, there's hope, there's healing, recovery is possible. Something
Say that
if you-
again slowly.
There's help, there's hope,
hope,
there's healing,
There's healing.
and recovery is possible.
Recovery is possible.
And then sometimes just to ask a person, what do you need? What do you need? And then if you don't know what to say, is to just let somebody know you're not alone.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
Just sitting there with them and letting them know you are not alone. Even if you don't have nothing else, you don't really know what to say, letting them know you're not alone.
Well, that's important, like you said, to ask, because here's Teresa. She's trained, she knows all of these things, and she's beautiful. And everybody's has a struggle,
Yeah.
but you don't know what somebody has inside. I mean, you don't know that somebody may be devastated because of a breakup or whatever. They may look like they have it all together, and that makes some people feel worse. Like, I'll never be, here's Jacqueline, she's beautiful, she's all this, but I'll never be like that. But if you ask somebody, you've had struggles, we all have. And if you can make that conversation to where you hear them.
Having that compassion, listening, I agree with Amy wholeheartedly, that listening non-judgmentally, folks, is a skill that I personally will never perfect. It's something that I'm always going to strive to be a better listener. And it's so important. And I don't know, I had a police officer in one of my trainings once, and he said this, and it really kind of resonated and stuck with me. He said, you have to tell your story 300 times. And I said, 300? He said, yeah. He's like, every time I tell my story, it hurts a little bit less.
That's true.
But how important it is to have that. Who do you tell your story to?
Yeah.
Someone
Yeah,
to listen
you have
to it.
You have to find someone that you feel safe with
Absolutely.
to go to.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
I also know there was a gentleman who, when we start talking about asking this question, how are you having thoughts of suicide? I had a father that said, Amy, can I share with your class today? And I said, absolutely. So we have to remember you're not always going to be, even though I'm a mother of 3, I sure want to know that if I ask that question that they would open up to me, right? But we have to be realistic. And he said, the worst day of my life, I started seeing those signs and symptoms that you were talking about in my own son, that he was suicidal. And I remember reaching out and saying, son, I've noticed XYZ, and so I'm going to have to ask this question. He said, I took everything I had to say, are you having thoughts of suicide? And his son said, yes. And he said, well, how do I help you? And
Yeah.
he said,
Yeah.
Dad, I just don't feel comfortable telling you about what's going on in my life. And he said, I remember what you said, Amy. It was, don't take it personal.
Right.
The next thing is, well, who do you feel comfortable? And he said, I did. I asked, who do you feel comfortable? And he said, well, Uncle, whatever. And he said, get in the car and let's go. But there is a time, remember that it's not about us. It's
Right.
getting them to the help that they need and deserve. And don't take it personally if they don't feel comfortable telling you, right? Just find them the person that they do feel comfortable talking with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
I
I'm
want to
gonna-
I want to continue.
Sure. I'd love to touch on 2 things. So one, the things that Teresa had said is, is that judgment, right? That assumption
Right.
or that labeling of you're just lazy.
Right.
And I remember in junior high and high school, I caused a lot of trouble. And-
You and me. I blew up a fire extinguisher once. I got into a lot of trouble for that. Yeah.
but I always tell people I wasn't, because I was really a good kid. But yeah, I was acting out a lot, and I was always labeled a problem child. But that was a label, right? That was an assumption
Yeah.
and a judgment. And I always tell people I wasn't a problem child. It's a child that had a lot of problems. And when you don't have a voice, when you don't know how to use your voice,
Right.
and say this is what's going on,
Right.
you know, I want to die.
Yeah.
That's hard to tell people.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we act out, right, in
Oh, for
ways
sure.
that
For sure.
to touch on, like, and he said, is that, you know, they're looking at his invitations. What's
Yeah.
going on that's
Yeah.
causing
I love that.
person to act out in such a way, you know, rather than just making the blanket assumption and judgment that they're just a troublemaker,
Yeah.
you know, because again, so even talking to counselors and talking to mental health workers, so for someone who has never really been able to use their voice and is very passive, it doesn't go typically from passive to assertive. Once you start to find your voice, it usually goes from passive to aggressive.
Okay.
Because now, like, the dam has broken.
Right.
It's all coming out.
All hell's breaking loose here.
exactly.
Here I come. Good luck.
And it's not
Both
always,
comes.
and it's not always pretty, right?
Yeah.
It's not always in the language or the words that you would prefer or comfortable to hear, but that's where that listening non-judgmentally really comes in. I mean, I can think of times where I was told, no, you need to say that differently. I'm like, what? You know, I'm finally saying it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Going back to that river of suicide, you know, the dam's broke. He's on his way to the waterfall, right? Instead of us, you know, instead of getting out of his way, going, oh, he's just losing it now, we need to be throwing him the life preserver. Does that make sense? That's when we need to see it, get that life preserver around him and get him out. Does that, I mean, if I can go back to that analogy, right? But I love the fact that he said not only is that, has this barrier between his thoughts, and now he's acting on that, right? And we've got to get him out of that water.
Why do you do what you do? This is not a trick question, but it's just, I just see and I sense so much camaraderie here between all of us, you know, and it's just been my incredible pleasure to get to know all of you, every single one here. I just think you are just beautiful people. And there's, you know, I asked the question because it touches my heart. You know, why do you do what you do? Tell me about that.
Well, it's easy for me because I am a faith-based person, and I think God says, be my hands and feet. And to be for a spokesperson for those who can't speak for themselves, right? I mean, we're told to do that, right? And I take it seriously that there are so many people that are silenced and then they're struggling, right? And it doesn't take a lot just to show some love and to say, I see you. How many people in this world do you think Jason touched upon it that just feel I'm invisible, and you're not invisible, right? And if I may, we can do a better job. We can prevent suicide, but we also just the little things, and I go back to some of my favorite I guess, group that I will teach sometimes is our bus drivers. And I love them because I want you to think about how they can touch somebody's life in the morning if a young child steps out of their home and all chaos was breaking loose, right? To say, good morning, welcome aboard. I've been waiting to see you. It's good to see you this morning. They may not ever see this. And at the end of the day, on the way back, and maybe they know they're going back into something that's not very pleasant, right? To say, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, Jason. And I've had so many of them just open that door to say, what you're saying is so true to so many on our bus for those students, right? But I do it. Teresa is pleasing you, tell, and y'all. But I do it because I know I'm told to be the hands and feet.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
That is really beautiful, and that you're actually active in pursuing your calling. I love that. I really do.
Teresa?
I do it. You know what? For me, there's healing. There's healing. when that officer shared that about sharing your story multiple times, for me, it's healing, and it's also because I don't want people to suffer in silence needlessly, and that's the bottom line. It doesn't have to be something that, well, I can't afford it or I don't have the time. There's an answer. And what we teach in mental health first aid is right here, just in this room alone, we have a brain trust. We have a lot of brilliant people here with a lot of passion, information, and knowledge and experience that can help somebody else. Yeah. So that's my motivation, is I don't want to see anybody feel that sense of hopelessness and grief without any support, because it is available.
Well, my job is to find people like these who work with, I mean, a lot of our people are at or below the poverty level. And who knows how many of us have felt terrible. We also have our IDD side, and those are people that can't speak for themselves, that may not have any place else to go. And so I find the people to help on all aspects of our, all over the 19 counties that we have. There's some of them that are not as wealthy as, say, Kerrville or Bernie, but we need the people, and to find the people that have this genuine caring like these guys, that's what we look for. And I feel like it's my kind of calling too, is to find how can we help others get the help they need.
And Jason?
Yeah, so absolutely. I don't want people to experience what I experienced, from the suicide. I mean, even before the suicide attempt, it was years and years of obsessing about.
Did you overdose over pills?
I did. And so I was one of those people that I had no plan. I knew I wanted to die. I thought about it every day.
Wow.
I hated being alive. Wow. I would get mad that I couldn't be somebody else. And eventually...
was that because you felt you had no voice? You couldn't express your need or what you were going through? You felt unloved, uncared for?
Yeah, I just hated myself. And I think it was due to the confusion that came about from the sexual abuse,
Gotcha.
the feeling unsafe, and just feeling, I guess, the shame, that I carried around for so long. So I started drugs and alcohol early.
Gotcha.
And that compounded things.
Yeah. That doesn't ever help.
Right. But and so, like I said, I had no plan. I just knew I wanted to die. And then one day it just felt like too much, and I left. I was actually in school. I was community college. I left my classroom early, went home, and then swallowed a bottle of...
So you had proactively thought today is going to be the
No,
day?
no, it just was, it just hit, and I just left and did it. It was very impulsive for me. But I think because of
the culmination of all those thoughts.
Right, of just that
Foundation
of self-hatred and shame and all of that. It finally just hit where it just happened. It felt like it just happened. I just got up and left class because I was just tired of feeling the way I did. I didn't know I was going to go home and swallow a bottle, of Cinequan, but I did. And so...
And what happened afterwards? You just conked out, you passed out, who found you?
Yeah, so somebody came home that I didn't, and I didn't want anyone to be there, so I left. And I ended up, I had a friend that lived on the other side of this churchyard. And so I just started walking that way. I stopped by. I didn't even know how long these pills were going to take to kick in and everything. And she noticed, her mom was a nurse. She noticed, I started kind of passing out a little bit while we were talking, and she says well, hold on a second, I need to go grab something. And then she talked to her mom, they called 911. And it was really within, according to the paramedics, seconds, that if they hadn't gotten there and started CPR, that I wouldn't have made it, so. But then I think about, to add to that is, I remember this thought, and this is another reason why I do what I do. I remember being in and out of consciousness, and the paramedic at the, or I don't know if it was a paramedic, but in the ER,
Right.
putting the tube down my throat,
Breathing tube.
and then making fun of me while I got gagged on it. So that is the treatment that a lot of people receive when they either act out or are thinking about suicide, is that they're not always taken seriously. There's a lot of judgment, and people say, well, if they're talking about suicide, they just want attention, or if people are cutting on themselves, or we call it non-suicidal
Yeah.
self-injury.
A lot of teens and stuff like that do a lot
They
of
just
cutting. and-
right. They
Yeah.
just want attention. Well, if somebody is cutting themselves, give them the attention, because that's a
Right?
very extreme cry for help. That is a very huge invitation. Maybe they are asking for attention because they need it.
Yeah, my daughter did that.
Yeah.
And the first time I saw it, I was like, I wasn't equipped with it at that time. It's like, oh my God, what do I do with this?
Right.
Like,
What do I see? Yeah.
What do I see? And the teacher brought it because they do it in secret.
Right.
But you can obviously see it in open, but it's so.
Well,
for
and I
sure.
think what people, especially adults, parents, caregivers, teachers, anybody who works with young people, is that they need to understand that behavior is communication.
Yeah.
It's
Say that again.
great.
Say that again.
behavior is communication. It has a reason, it has a purpose, and rather than, and I think maybe, I can't help but wonder, Jason, that for us growing up and the behaviors that we were demonstrating, if instead of receiving some punishment or disparaging remarks, we would have been asked, hey, what's going on? What happened to you? And that's such an important cultural shift that needs to happen in this country and around the world, is instead of assuming that their behavior is with malintent,
Yeah.
but instead consider the possibility that it is an expression of pain.
Yeah. That's good. That's very good.
The kids may not know the words. Like you said, give them words.
And those invitations, even if somebody said, I just don't want to be here anymore, I'm just ready to check out, ask that question. What did you mean by that? When you said, I heard you say, I just want to check out. What does that mean? Don't assume that you know what's going on, right? But I really do, because he opened up, I think, a pathway to talk about when you ask that question. Remember, sometimes you're going to ask a question, and when we say ask the question, it's are you having thoughts of suicide? Are you thinking of killing yourself, right? And so it's really important that, when we ask it directly. We do not, when I teach this, it's a straightforward approach. It's not, are you having thoughts of harming yourself? That is not the same. Harming yourself and killing yourself are two totally different things.
Yeah.
So we say
You deal with both of those.
Absolutely. So we say we need to talk about it straight on, even to some young adults, because there is such a taboo word about suicide. Even asking the question, sometimes it's saying, are you having thoughts of suicide? We've even had this, no, I just want to die. Because, so sometimes you have to ask that question, are you thinking of killing yourself? No more. And then remember, we always do a follow-up question. Have you thought about how you would do it? Have you purchased the items to carry out your plan? Do you know when you're going to put that plan of action into action? So we literally ask those questions. And so I always like to say, I'm going to do 3 scenarios first of all. The first time you ask the question, they say yes, and I have it all planned out, right? That wasn't Jason that day, was it?
No.
Then you come back and you say, are you having thoughts of suicide? Well, yeah. Well, do you know when you're going to do it? And on that day, all 3 of those questions was a no. Do we leave him alone? No, because he said yes. We're not leaving him alone. We get him connected. But the last one, if I may, is to say, are you having thoughts of suicide? And they're like, no. What's your gut just tell you?
Yes.
I always like to say your gut is a gift, and if
Yeah,
your
it
gut
is.
says,
It is.
yeah, I don't think that you're really safe today, we're not leaving him alone. So remember, Jason just kind of just opened that door beautifully to say that it was in real life. He didn't have it all planned out. Remember, it can be very impulsive, and then they just do it, so we don't leave them alone, right?
When you came to in the ER, were you asked any questions were helpful in terms of getting you on the road to recovery, or how did you get on the road of recovery? For our listeners here now, I know I have you on the spot here and it's uncomfortable, but we're going to look past that and talk to someone on the other side who's listening and who's really waiting to hear your story.
So unfortunately, no, I was not. So in the hospital, I was just told that I was going to be, so this was in Florida, they had the Baker Act, which is just, we don't think you're safe by yourself. And I was going to be admitted into a psychiatric hospital for, I think it was 72 hours is what. So by the time I got there, I already knew exactly what I was going to tell the doctor is that while lying in bed, I've been able to think about everything that was going on. And wow, what an eye opener. And I basically BS'd my way out of the hospital. And so, you know, please don't take that advice.
No. But I'm sure you're not the first and nor will be the last here.
And unfortunately, it from that time, which I was 18 or 19, those years are blurred a little bit. I've had over 25 hospitalizations. And so it took a long time because I wanted help. I didn't know how to ask for it. So even when I would volunteer to go in, or I got to the point where the ER had to be called, or, you know, the ambulance had to be called because of overdosing on medications and stuff. And I was trying to get there, you know, I just didn't know how to ask for it. So that was behavioral communication. But then once I got there, I felt the shame and the embarrassment and the anger of everything that had happened, and started acting out again. And so
anger because you weren't heard and you didn't get help.
All of those years, right? It's still, you know, here it is 20 years later or whatever, and I'm still struggling, and I'm still trying to get the help that I need. I didn't have that hope yet.
But you don't have those feelings anymore.
No, I don't have those feelings anymore. There are days that thoughts come through, like, you know, bad days where, like, man, you know, I wouldn't, sometimes I just hate life and I wish that I wasn't here anymore. And that goes back to what Amy said earlier, and thoughts of suicide are common, but that doesn't mean you have to act on
they're,
it.
you know, they come and they go, and sometimes you just have to let them go
Right.
without acting on them.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Because they're lies.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you are a walking miracle.
Yes.
And I thank God for your life. I thank God that you came here today and that you were bold enough to say, you know, I am a survivor of suicide.
Right.
I am a survivor that once I listened to those lies, but I can tell you now that they are lies.
Right. Absolutely.
And they're not to be acted on. And there is those help, healing, hope, and recovery is possible.
Recovery is such an important message that permeates every aspect of mental health first aid, is letting that person know that it doesn't mean that you're going to feel this bad forever, that there is another way. Even if you don't know what that is, I'm going to walk this walk with you and help you discover what it is. But something that you spoke to, Jason, really kind of triggered my thoughts. As helpers, mental health helpers, because I think that's what we all are. We don't need a fancy license or a degree for that, but we can all be mental health helpers. My background was actually in crisis management. I was part of the mobile crisis outreach team for over 10 years. So my job was to do suicide assessments. And something I want listeners to know is, and Amy touched on this about assuming things. Don't assume that once you've got that person in front of a professional that they're going to be forthcoming. Right. And so I just want to add that it's so important that if you're that person supporting someone with thoughts of suicide, that you share that collateral information so that this person has the best shot, and that the fear of the unknown or the fear of what it means to get help doesn't get the best of them and limit them from getting to that place of recovery.
Thank you. And so, in closing, I know we can sit here for hours all day talking and sharing, and you know, and honestly, in closing, I had thoughts of suicide as well because I was on this prescription benzodiazepine, and I stopped it cold turkey because I had so many side effects from that drug. For a period of 4 months I took it. But I remember those dark days, those days where I felt that I couldn't find a way out, that everywhere I looked it was hopeless. And I remember those days, so I know what that feels like. And by God's grace, I didn't take my life, and by God's grace, I'm here today. But in closing, how can people get help? I know that you've given me a flyer here, and there's a helpline that people can call 988.
Yes.
Instead of 911, 988, and you can also text, which is interesting because some people don't want to actually get on the phone and talk and reveal themselves, but they can text and they'll get a response and a reply.
Never judge. I mean, that's the best thing. They can call them. What I definitely need you to know about the 988 number is, again, it is confidential. Again, you can call it, you can text it, you don't have to have insurance, you don't have to pay for the service, right? You can call them 24/7, 7 days a week, that's holidays and weekends, 2 a.m. in the morning that you're feeling like you're really in the dark place, call them, they'll never
And then
judge you.
will they put you into somebody that's going to do a
They
follow-up?
are trained to help you, and
Yeah.
remember, they will take it to the next step. They'll talk to you, and you don't have to call them specifically, even if maybe after hearing this today, all you can remember is 988, and you have that person in your life that you know is struggling. You're like, what the heck? I don't know how to help them. You call 988 to say,
Okay,
how
yeah.
do I help my friend? How do I
Right,
help my family
right,
member?
right.
They will guide you through it. But I want you to know that if Jason called them today, they're going to pick up the line. They're going to say, I'm so glad you called them. But if 20 minutes later he said, darn it, I forgot, I wanted to ask them about this, they're not going to pick up the line and go, you again, Jason. They're going to say, welcome back, and how can I assist you?
Yeah.
So 24/7, I need them to know, especially those of you who are caregivers, I also need to let them know that this is a safety net, that if you're with them and you know that, between you have a family yourself, and between 5 and 7 o'clock at night, you can help them, but you're worried about letting them go, let them have that 988. Do you have a phone? And I put it in your phone for you, so that they know that 24/7 there is someone that they can give them help.
Yeah.
But also, I love the fact that he talked about his recovery.
Yeah.
And to be realistic today, before we leave here, I wanted y'all to hear what he said. It's not a bed of roses every day in Jason's
Right.
life, but his recovery
Yeah.
is true, and that he knows that still have days that I feel suicidal, but I know I don't have to act upon that. I really wanted that to hit
that's
home
really
and to
important.
say that's part of his recovery.
Yeah.
That's his new norm in his life, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful. It is beautiful, and it's encouraging, and there's hope. And that's what we want listeners to really, really, really hear that message, everybody. There is hope. So if you're thinking about suicide, remember what we have spoken about today. Take that to heart. We didn't just come and do a broadcast because we had nothing else to do. We came because we care. We're talking because we love. We want you to know you're not alone. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
for coming on
you.
the
Thank
show
you for
today.
having us.
And we'll look forward to doing more things in the community, wherever.
Thank
Till
you.
next
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.